Today, I have with me Gideon Haigh, one of the world's leading cricket writers, has been covering the game for almost 4 decades. Uh, uh, and his latest book, Indian Summers, is now out in India from Westland. It's an account of over a century of the greatest rivalry, arguably, in modern cricket, India Australia. Although I suppose English fans will have something to say about that. Uh, but just to start things off, Gideon, you know, the Ashes obviously have this great psychological hold on the cricket fans of both nations. And there's all this history and there's this ritual before the start of every Ashes series. Michael Vaughan questioning Australian techniques, Glenn McGrath predicting 5-0 for Aussies. So I just wanted to ask you, has there been a parallel sort of set of rituals or attitudes or patterns before India-Australia series as well?
Well, I think you saw just how popular Australian Indian cricket is here from last summer. Record crowds, record ratings, cricket that really captured the imagination. I think these days Australian cricket fans would probably think of the Ashes as representing the past and Australia versus India representing the future. There's a place for both, of course, because cricket is one of those sports that kind of marches backwards into the future. It's always kind of looking to what's gone before. But I think over the course of the last 25 years, probably dating from the 2001 Border-Gavaskar series, Australia versus India has acquired enough of a heritage, enough of a collection of great moments, enough of a pantheon of heroes to really connect with cricket fans of all ages here. If you were anywhere near cricket in the great period of the Australian team in the 90s and 2000s, you remember that probably India was our closest rival after the decline of the West Indies, and they've become a kind of a de facto measuring stick.
Right. Then how significant would you describe the role of the 2020 and 2021 series? Because in that series, I think Australian fans saw a lot of new Indian cricketers for the first time, because it wasn't Kohli and it wasn't Rohit who was doing the damage. It was all these younger players, and they managed to beat Australia at Gabba.
Yeah, I mean, we trust the evidence of our own eyes and the live experience. And for Australia to lose consecutive series here was confronting, salutary for us. We understood that India was formidable in its own conditions, but for them to beat us at our own game, particularly by attacking batsmanship and aggressive fast bowling, was kind of to take the game right up to us. It mattered a lot to Australians to recapture the Border-Gavaskar trophy last summer. There was a feeling that this had kind of become almost as much the World Test Championship as the World Test Championship itself.
When I think of Australian captains, certainly the captains that I grew up watching, Steve Waugh, Ricky Ponting, Michael Clarke, it's fair to say that Pat Cummins is a departure in terms of persona and in terms of how the public perceives him. Could you tell us a little bit about why that is the case and why Cummins is considered something of a departure? His passionate activism about climate change, etc., are things that have become controversial in Australia in the past. So just to Indian fans who might not be familiar with the Australian media landscape, could you just tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the impressive thing about Cummins is that he's done it his own way. I think previous Australian captains did feel a certain necessity to live up to the stereotype of the gritty, stoic, resilient, hard-nosed, sort of Ian Chappell, Alan Border tradition of captains. Cummins was smart enough to realise that wasn't in his nature. I mean, he's tough. He's very resilient. I mean, he's dynamic and he's very, very Australian in lots of ways. but he grasped that if he was going to succeed for long enough, the idea of assuming an alternative guise or living up to other people's expectations was not going to be sustainable. It's interesting, John Inverarity once said to me that all Australian captains go mad at some stage. After a while, the burdens of office and the necessity to live up to expectations and the constant grind of one's own form to maintain that standard eventually gets the better of even the toughest of them. Once again, impressive about Cummins is that he seems to be able to maintain his own playing standards and live up to the cares of office without obviously being burdened by them. I mean, part of that is to do with very careful management of his workload. He's not knocking himself out by playing pointless cricket. He's smart enough to be selfish about his own game. He's also realised, I think, that it's within the ken of a bowling captain to inspire just as much as a batting captain. We've always thought of the idea of captains as being able to lead by example by making big runs.
Right.
But in fact, in some ways, it's a bowling captain, because it only takes one ball to get a batsman out, has a better chance of making an impression on a game with a succession of spells than a batting captain. He's actually turned our calculations on the head.
Especially a fast bowling captain in Test matches.
Yeah. I guess the one place that he hasn't been able to do it is India, because India, to be a fast bowling captain, is a huge ask. And he failed at it in 2023.
Right. Now, when we think about, say, the last, 20 years of India-Australia matches, up until, I think, the 21 series, which we just spoke about, there was this sense of, India being good but not good enough. And I think particularly under Kohli's captaincy, there were a lot of Test matches that were very closely fought, but India ultimately sort of gave way. And, media is very fond of projecting sort of psychological reasons, etc., for that. Oh, they're not tough enough. They haven't got the fight, etc. Have you seen that sort of image changing in the last 5 to 10 years when India have now started winning tournaments?
Well, I think you're underestimating 2018-19. I mean, they were bloody good. And Kohli was fantastic. He's got charisma. He's got the charisma that I think Viv Richards had in the 80s and 90s, which has made him intensely watchable in Australian conditions. And as far as the media is concerned in Australia, he is an absolute gift. Pete Lawler and I, my colleague on Cricket et al., we often say that on a dull day, just look at Kohli, because he will give you something to write about. It's guaranteed. And even though on the last tour, he was probably just that little bit beyond his best, he was still absolute box office. A great player in decline is almost a fascinating study in its own right. So I would give Kohli a lot of the credit for the way in which Indian cricket has redefined itself in Australia, because I think we admired Tendulkar. We revered Tendulkar. Plenty of people turned up to watch Tendulkar in Australia for the sheer pleasure of watching his virtuosity. But there was not perhaps an expectation that he would be able to successfully carry his team with him.
Right.
I can remember going to the Boxing Day Test match in 2003, and I was sitting on the far side of the ground in the southern stand. And if you remember, in the first innings on Boxing Day, he nicked off down the leg side first ball, Tendulkar.
Right.
And I remember the whole row of people that I was with got up and walked out. They'd come to see Tendulkar. They weren't coming here to see anybody else. I think if Kohli got out, people would still stick around because they want to see Reshaped Pant. They want to see whoever else, Hardik Pandya or.
And they also wanted to see Kohli on the feet.
Absolutely. There's something. He's a great communicator. Tendulkar was a very introverted cricketer. Kohli is a great communicator. He's a great evangelist. And another thing that has made him popular in Australia, Australian fans value Test cricket. And Tendulkar is a stark raving fan of red ball cricket. and they related to that. They knew that it really mattered to him. They could get annoyed with him, and he could occasionally be peevish. But in the end, I think there was enormous respect and affection for him in this country.
Right, right. Now you mentioned, your partnership with Peter Lawler and Cricket et al. Uh, as someone who has written ex- extensively for newspapers around the world for decades, and you've just, for the last few years, a lot of your output has been on Substack and YouTube and all these new platforms. How do you see the landscape of cricket journalism changing, especially over the last, say, 5 to 6 years, as digital has become big? I think Cricket et al. Itself has a partnership with the great cricketer, right? And yeah, and they're sort of emblematic of this new brand of cricket journalism and presentation, right? So I'd just like to you take your views about this as someone who has dipped their toes recently into this world.
Well, the barriers to entry are a lot lower than they used to be. You used to have the advantage of a legacy media pulpit in order to reach a mass audience. The difficulty is that is monetizing it, is making it pay, is making it sustainable, and that's a challenge for everyone. I don't think anyone's got the secret yet. Ask me in 10 years' time how the transition has worked out, and I'll probably give you a more considered answer. I do know that one thing I think that is lacking in cricket journalism is independence. I think it's quite hard to be completely independent when you are a part of a large media organisation. There are all sorts of compromises, as fearsome as you can be about preserving your integrity. There are considerations to balance in covering the game. I don't feel beholden to anyone at all, except maybe Pete when I write about cricket, and I think he would probably feel the same way. We call
I
this.
think Mr. Lawler recently he lost a position after criticizing Israel, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly, on social media. Yeah.
When you are, since you haven't been, since you were, officially a part of so many newspapers in the past, and now you have this independent thing going, how difficult or how easy was it to make that sort of transition when, suddenly you're your own CEO? And I know that you've written a book on CEOs as well. So I think we probably resist that nomenclature, but you know what I'm saying. That, with total power also comes total accountability, right?
Yeah, well, I've always felt accountable for everything I've written. There's nothing that I wrote for newspapers that I wouldn't have stood behind 100%. I guess it just makes concrete something that I've already felt, and it's something to which I feel naturally comfortable. It's in some respects, it was the natural next step of my career. I mean, in some respects, I'd not been a staff journalist anywhere since the mid-90s. I'd actually only ever been a sort of a freelance contributor to newspapers in all that time. So I was sort of straddling the fence. And for me to pull that last leg over the fence was not in the end a huge decision for me. I was also getting to that stage where I probably needed a new challenge. You can get too comfortable doing these jobs for too long, and you can start to repeat yourself. And I think Substack also lends itself to a different kind of writing, a more discursive, more conversational style of writing. You don't feel as though you have to have a view on absolutely everything. You don't feel as though your day-to-day is dictated by the news cycle in quite the same way as it is in a newspaper. If your rival on another newspaper is writing on a certain subject, you kind of feel as though you've got to have a crack at it yourself.
Actually, the first ever thing that I read by you was not cricket related at all. I think I might be getting the name slightly wrong, but I think it was an essay called How Google is Making Us Stupid.
Oh, God, yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was sometime in the mid 2000s. Do you remember that one?
I do. I mean, I didn't start off as a cricket journalist. I started off as a business journalist. and I've covered lots and lots of things. I've written several true crime books. I've written books of cultural history. I've written books of investigative journalism, corporate journalism. I've written corporate histories. Uh, I I consider myself to be a journalist who writes about cricket, not a cricket journalist. Um,
There was one book recently where these two worlds collided, right? An Edwardian cricket murder.
yeah, yeah. Well, the worlds are already always overlapping. I mean, in some respects, it seemed like a strange marriage of interest to be a business journalist and a cricket journalist, but of course, the two now move almost in lockstep. And a lot of the considerations around cricket are commercial decisions. So, with my background, I do feel as though, in some respects, it comes naturally to me to analyse them.
Which actually brings us nicely to our next question. And before I do that, I'm going to read a few lines from the chapter in this book, which covers the World Cup final in 2023. And here you're writing that a realist could well argue that India won this World Cup anyway. They will rake off almost $4 in every $10 the tournament generated. The balance of global cricket power politically, demographically, and economically is fundamentally undisturbed. The BCCI and BJP will remain separated by a fact paper. The international game will continue as an elite racket. I found this a lot of fun to read. What I found really interesting was that you draw a straight line between the years in which BJP has started controlling Indian cricket. And also it sort of coincides with the big three era in global cricket, right? Where India, England, and Australia have sort of cornered a lot of the resources in the international game. So what I wanted to ask you was, could you tell our readers a little bit about how these two things are related, like the rise of the BJP regime in Indian cricket and also the rise of the big three in world cricket and how that has changed the landscape?
Well, it probably doesn't make all that much sense to talk about a big three anymore. It's a big one and a medium sized two, and the rest are just making up the numbers. I mean, that's pretty obvious. And of course, with great prestige, which is attached to Indian cricket, comes all sorts of political nuances. Politicians gravitate towards popularity. They understand popularity and the levers of public opinion very well. Proximity to cricket serves them. Proximity to money serves them. In some ways, it would be unnatural were the BJP not to be interested in proximity to cricket. If they disdained it, if they kept an obvious cordon sanitaire between.
But we've seen politicians being top administrators in other countries as well. I mean, right now, even as we speak, Pakistan's interior minister is also the head.
Oh yeah,
etc. What I wanted to ask you is, what makes this regime and its hold over cricket different from all those other situations? What makes it unique and / or egregious?
Well, I think it's let's concentrate on Jay Shah, shall we? I mean, it takes a pretty exotic sense of humor to entertain the idea that Jay Shah is the best equipped and most capable man in the world to run international cricket. I mean, his qualifications are that he's the son of the Indian Home Minister, and that's it. He's got no particular vision. He's got no particular skills. He's not a particularly charismatic man. He doesn't have a huge track record. He's only there for one reason, which is the political clout of the BJP. Now, that's not necessarily an argument against India. That's not an anti-Indian argument. I suspect that probably the best equipped people in the world to run cricket are somewhere in India. But Jay Shah is not that man. So I find it absolutely amazing that people just sort of don't comment on that all the time. We can't have it reinforced enough.
Probably speaks to that journalistic independence you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, easy. I guess it's easy for me to say from my vantage point. Much more difficult for someone in India to do so. Um, so yeah, there's that. There's that. I mean, look, you're absolutely right in the sense that there has always been, a nexus of power in India where cricket and politics have met, and sometimes it's been useful for cricket to have that kind of political influence. It can move roadblocks in a country like India, which is pretty good at creating roadblocks.
Like ahead of the 1996 World Cup, Mike Marquesi described precisely such situations.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But that, of course, that means that cricket's interests are perennially at risk of being secondary to politics interests.
Right, right. Now, just looking towards the future a little bit, we've seen talks of the Saudi government getting into cricket investment in a big way. And we know that the Ambanis have had previous business relations with them. So we're all sort of heading towards a sort of perfect storm of maybe like a Kerry Packer 2.0 like situation in international cricket. Would you say that's an overblown fear at this point of time, or would you say it's realistic?
No, I don't think that's an overblown point of view at all. I think that's the trajectory of probably the inevitable trajectory of cricket, which is more private capital. And I suspect that the biggest source of private capital looking for a home at the moment is petrodollars in the Middle East. They've already shown that they covet sport in games that are almost as popular as cricket. It is interesting that they would be coming into a market which already has a dominant force, a hegemon in India. But I suspect that means that they will simply go into partnership with India, which would be a very, very powerful partnership and very, very difficult to undo.
And so far, nobody has managed to convince the BCCI to let Indian creators play in other leagues, but maybe the proposed Dubai thing will maybe see Indian cricketers playing overseas for the first time.
That would be interesting, actually. I mean, that would also be a way to remedy some of the inequalities in world cricket. If the BCCI were interested in
It's interesting. Why do you say that? That it would maybe remedy the inequality?
because Indian players bring commercial and broadcasting dollars with them wherever they play. If you had, I don't know, KL Rahul out here this summer or Jasprit Bumrah playing in the BBL, that immediately confers on the BBL by an order of magnitude a greater significance. If you wanted them to, God knows, if you wanted them to play in the CPL, you could probably revolutionise West Indian cricket or the SA20 or anything like that. That would potentially, be hugely advantageous for world cricket, but it would mean Indian cricket sharing some of its resources with the rest of the world, and in some ways, it's in India's interest to keep the rest of the world on a drip feed.
Right. I think what you're talking about is like India's reluctance to sort of increase the size of the pie, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think if any sport has to take it to the next level, because I think cricket is, popular among maybe a third of the known world right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can do so much more, right?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gideon. I had a great time reading this book, and all of you are encouraged to pick this up as well. As I mentioned, this is now out in India from Westland Books, Indian Summers by Gideon Haigh. And before we let you go, Gideon, I think I'm going to put us both on the spot here and ask you for a prediction for today's blockbuster finish between India and England. I predict that India will probably fall short by about 20 runs. You go.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to lean against you. I think they'll win it.
I see.
Yeah, it's pretty flat. I reckon there's a pretty good Indian team. I reckon that there's a bit of character. I reckon Pant will get them there, probably. It's exciting, though, isn't it? It's exciting.
It's been, I mean, a lot of people were saying that the first couple of days are very slow play and everything, but I actually loved it.
Yeah. No, actually, it's been really terrific to have two test matches going on at the same time. Like, I've watched so much cricket.
And the way the time zones work also is almost an exact overlap. One ends and the other begins.
Absolutely perfect. No, I've loved it. And there have been two such different test matches. You just simply, I am amazed, constantly amazed by the variety of that is possible within Test cricket. The incredible versatility of players, the incredible diversity of scenarios, and just how many questions we're left asking at the end of the day's play, and how much uncertainty the format introduces.
It's absolutely, and the pink ball is another level of complexity.
Absolutely. It's still the most exciting format. I don't care what you say; it's still the best.
Absolutely, and long may it stay that way.
Exactly.
Thank you so much once again for joining us today, Gideon. And I hope that this book finds a lot of readers in India. I'm sure they'll have as great time as me with reading it. Thank you so much.